Hi, I'm Laurence. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Laurence. Nice to meet you.
Hi,
Maxime.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Maxime. Hi, Maxime.
Good afternoon. Each team has 20 minutes to present their case to the judges. My colleague will show papers for the 10-minute mark, the 5-minute mark, the 2 minutes remaining mark, and the final 30 seconds of the presentation. The last 10 seconds I will show with my hands. The team that has not finished the presentation by the end of this time will be stopped. And the 5-minute question period will start. I would like to take the time to remind the panel of judges that the question period is 5 minutes long and that it's mandatory to ask at least one question. I will now let the judges introduce themselves and you may begin when you are ready.
Yeah. My name is Maxime Clément. I'm CPA CA, and I work for Ardor CPA.
Hello, my name is Laurent Robert. I'm a CPA CA, and I'm an advisor at the CPA Order.
Hi, I'm Laurence. I'm a CPA CA as well, and I work for the Office of the Auditor General of Canada.
Growth. It's a simple concept, yet from the smallest to the largest companies, all are affected by the successful implementation of strategies of how to do. In your case, Martin, you came forward to us with 2 specific growth questions. Where are you going to build a new factory, and how are you going to finance it, and if an IPO is the proper method of doing so? Hi, my name is Jasper. These are my colleagues Dave and Sohel, and we're here to walk you through on how to actually be GAAP compliant and how this will affect the future decision making with regards to your 2 questions. We're going to tackle this in 3 components. The first being the financial reporting structure and how any adjustments will be done. Secondly, we'll look at actually whether an IPO is the proper route to do this financing. And third, we're looking at where you should build your new factory. So, to walk you through your agenda, we'll first talk about what reporting framework should you follow. Next, we'll talk to you about what adjustments are needed based on that framework. Thirdly, we'll look at where should this factory be built. And lastly, we'll look at the actual financing options. So let's jump into it and tackle the first 2 topics. So, firstly, you're a Canadian-controlled private corporation. This opens you up to both ASPE and IFRS. If we look under ASPE, you have access to you don't have any reporting standards with regards to that, and there's no more flexible structured reporting here. However, under IFRS, you have pressure from your investors to go public, as well as you're seeking additional financing, which means an IPO would most likely be logical to follow that. Therefore, you should follow the IFRS reporting structure. So, jumping into that, let's look at actually any debt concerns with regards to switching to IFRS and applying it. Currently, the bank requires you to have a debt-to-equity ratio above 3 and a current rate below 3, and a current ratio above 1.7. With your current statements, you meet both of them at 1.98 and 1.96 respectively. So now the question remains, switching to IFRS, how will it actually affect these ratios? Let's look at it, and I'll pass it over to my colleague Sohel, who will walk you through some of the concerns.
Thank you. So the first problem we tackled was the revenue recognition problem. So currently the company had a special contract for the new model SE. So what they did is that they recognize all revenue concerning the sale of these vehicles. However, under IAS 18, as you can see, there's one condition standard that hasn't been met. So because there's 2 parts to the sale, so the first one is the sale of the good, then there's a 36-month period of time under which half of the amount can be refunded if they choose to ask for the refund. So the current impact is that the debt to equity ratio will be diminished and the current ratio will be again negatively impacted because we need to recognize a provision. So half of the amount has to be recognized under unearned revenue, and that's approximately $40 million. Moving on, there's the lawsuit provision that we have to tackle. So right now, there's a lawsuit against the company for a pedestrian that was hit by one of the tested vehicles. The lawsuit was from an amount of $5 to $10 million with a 80% chance that the company will have to pay this amount. So under IAS 37, we have to look if the provision is measurable, probable, and if there's possible legal obligation to pay the amount. Under these circumstances, we have to record a provision, which, when will happen, it will increase the debt, which will negatively impact the debt to equity ratio. And this is by recording a lawsuit of $6 million on the balance sheet. Furthermore, the government started a new law where any manufacturing company that has any lead in their manufacturing process have to pay an $11 penalty per kilogram. Again, we will follow the provision under IAS 37, which is all met under which all criteria are met here. So we have to record a provision. This will in fact increase the debt by recording a provision of $2.51 million in the future. Well, we have to record it now, so it will reduce the debt to it will increase the debt to equity ratio. Furthermore, at the current situation, the inventory is being recorded at cost. However, under IAS 2, we have to record it at lower of cost, or NRV, which is net realizable value. We also have to take into consideration any conversion costs as well as the shipping costs. Looking at the books, looking at the documents, we saw that there was currently a $2.51 million shipping cost that wasn't taken into account in the inventory, so we have to increase the inventory, which has a positive impact on the current ratio as we have more inventory in the books. So at the end, as I said, we will increase inventory at $2.5 million. Moving on, Jasper will continue.
Moving on, looking at financial instruments. Currently, there's a program issued to incentivize management with regards to increasing revenue. So if revenues meet a 25% increase from one year to the next, management will receive a bonus. However, the issue here is that, again, following IAS 37, all the criteria for provision have been met. So the impact on this is that on the quantitative side, you have to record a provision of $10 million, increasing your debt, therefore increasing your debt to equity ratio. And on the qualitative side, you actually have to look at management's incentives to recognize revenue early. This will be something as well that has to be tested. So this could be done through any controls as well, which have to be looked into further. Following on, in terms of the capitalization of R&D, currently all non-payroll expenses were capitalized for the patent that was developed. However, the issue here is that you must meet all these criteria to actually capitalize it. So therefore, there's some costs that were capitalized that should have been expensed, and vice versa. So if we look at the split, under the expense side, we can see that any tests prior to May should have been expensed, and those after capitalized. Admin support fees and any professional fees and advertising, which were all capitalized, should have been expensed. And the payroll expenses should have been capitalized. Therefore, an adjustment will have to be made to the actual R&D capitalization, which will decrease it by $1.63 million. Next, looking at the actual capitalization of expenses, you're looking to increase your production from 500 to 750 cars a week. Therefore, you're planning to expense all of these costs associated to it. Once more, you'll have to distinguish between the capitalizable and the actual expensable costs. If we look at the split here, we can see that you're allowed to expense the T&E associated with the engineers, any maintenance and duplication and the training costs, which amount to $2.47 million. However, you're looking to install a new actual assembly line, and you're changing the motors to actually bring an additional economic benefit. Both these costs will have to be capitalized, bringing $25 million. Therefore, only $2.47 can actually be expensed on the future years. In terms of other considerations, we can look at the government grants and the reservations. These relate to the revenue. So specifically, all these criteria will have to be met in terms of actually recording it. So for the government grants, the $6,000 will have to be recorded when the actual transfer of the ownership of the good has occurred. And the same for the reservation. Even though you receive $1,000, you have to record a provision of $1,000 before you can record it until that good is actually transferred. So, as stated, all these criteria must be met. So, taking all this into consideration, as stated before, all these current ratios, all the ratios and the covenants associated have been met. However, with the changes, we can see that even though your current ratio is still met, dropping by only 0.04, the debt to equity covenant is actually broken, exceeding the 3. Therefore, the recommendation here is not to actually follow an IPO. So looking at here in terms of the actual reporting framework, you should follow IFRS here, and in terms of the actual adjustments needed to be done, it should be regarding the provision, the revenue recognition, and the cost of capitalization. I'll now pass it over to Dave. We'll talk about the second half now.
Thank you, Jasper. So I'm going to be answering why and where should the factory be built, as well as the financing options. So what are the potential financing options that you have? Going to building a new plant, we first want to talk about our competitive advantage. So what is our competitive advantage in this industry and market? Well, it really is the proprietary manufacturing process of building these cars and having these zero-emission, low-cost, affordable cars. So we really want to keep that into mind. Secondly, we have to really keep in mind the importance of flexibility within our business model. These cars are very high technology, and the fact that you can create these cars, creating these cars to the local market is really important. So it allows for increased supervision, faster response times, and increased production. So you really had two options, or rather, you asked on two options, either Mexico or Granby. On the plus side for Mexico, there's cheaper labor, there's the lower transportation of material to be brought to the actual plant, but on the downside, there's a decreased flexibility which goes against your business model. The other option was kind of going to Granby. So there's a lower cost to bring cars to the market. As North America, especially Canada and the United States, are your primary markets, there's actually a lower cost of transportation from the plant to your market, to your dealerships. So that's something that we can take in consideration. Additionally, it increases your flexibility, which is something that you want. You have kind of a cash flow liquidity issue, and so the fact that you can bring these cars into market quicker will actually help you in that regard. Additionally, it'll be able to protect your competitive advantage. This proprietary manufacturing process is something that you want to protect. Without that, a lot of other companies, a lot of larger car manufacturers who are already established in this industry can just take your process and apply it to their own business. So the fact that you could potentially build this manufacturing plant, this factory right next to Granby, allows you to protect your competitive advantages much better. So despite the increased labor costs, flexibility in new manufacturing process is highly valued for your business. And so we recommend building the factory in Granby as opposed to having it in Mexico. Going to your triple bottom line, which is something that you should also be considering, regarding to the people, you have a duty to Quebec. The government is giving you subsidies, and so you have a duty of creating jobs, of building a community within your local headquarters. So this will actually help your people aspect of your bottom line. Regarding to the planet, as Canada is a primary market as well as the United States, the fact that your plant is within Canada, is in your primary market, allows you to bring your product to the market quicker. And since these are zero-emission vehicles, you want to essentially bring your vehicles to the market so that people can start using them immediately. And in terms of profit, well, the reduction of transportation time, as I mentioned before, will actually help you in terms of bring your product to the market. So there's something else that you should be considering. Perhaps actually a third option of perhaps creating a plant in the United States Rust Belt. So the southern United States. What this is it's kind of like a in transition in between the Mexico plant as well as the Granby plant. So there's a midpoint in flexibility. It's still located in the United States where your primary market is located. There's still going to be an additional transportation time. However, it's better than Mexico. There's still going to be lower labor costs as associated to the Granby plant, as there's a strong non-unionized movement in the southern United States with a lot of non-unionized workers, and there's going to be a lower transportation cost associated to your U.S. market. Regarding the initial public offering, so assuming the covenants are met, we have to consider the qualitative factors as well as the quantitative factors. So in terms of the qualitative factors, clearly there's going to be a loss of control. There's going to be more shareholders. People are going to perhaps have a different vision for the company, and that's something that you are going to have to take in consideration. Within the quantitative factors, well, since this is the first time adoption of IFRS, you have to comply to IFRS 1. And so in that regards, there's going to be more expenses in terms of professional fees. Additionally, on the plus side, however, there's going to be a lower cost of capital as you're going to be, in the public market, and you already perform audited financial statements. You'll be able to capture capital at a lower cost. But so given proper GAAP compliance adjustments, covenants are not met. So as mentioned by Jasper, you should not proceed with the initial public offering. So in terms of the additional financing, well, there's two really main things that you can do. So you can renegotiate. Ooh, that's a strong, hard word, huh? So renegotiating long-term financing. So you already have long-term financing with a bank, and clearly there's a high growth market in this industry. You're not only a tech company, but also a car manufacturer, and a lot of banks can see this. Your revenues are growing year to year as providing the financial statements, and so renegotiating long-term financing is definitely an option. A second option that you can possibly consider is issuing public debt, so bonds. This is a popular option for private companies to acquire additional funding, so perhaps issuing public debt might be a good option as well. So really, to sum it really up, our mandate here was to advise us on being GAAP compliant regarding accounting standards issues and how this will affect our future decision making. So where to build a plant and as well as whether to go public or not. And we covered this through three components. So the financial reporting structure and adjustments, whether we should go public, and the building and location of the factory. So we should remain under ASPE to meet the covenants. We shouldn't go public, and we should be building our plant in Grandview. Thank you very much, and now I'll open the floor to any questions.
Thank you. I have a question about the Model 4. It's a new model, and I think you didn't talk about this. It's about to receive $1,000 in advance to create an
To create
an enthusiasm
about this product.
Actually, we mentioned under the reservations, specifically it was related to the $1,000 to the additional right there. So you could record it, you wouldn't record that right away. You'd have that as unearned revenue first. And once the actual model the ownership has been transferred over to new customers that actually own it, they pay the full amount, then you record that entire $1,000 on that amount right there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I also saw about the lawsuit provision that you took $6 million of provision. Why did you take this amount? Why you didn't choose like the half of the bracket in between of the bracket?
So we went and from 5 to 10 million, that was the range.
Yes.
So we took the half point of the range and then applied the 80% chance of the event of happening, which gave us the $6 million.
Okay.
And I have a question about Peggy. I'm just realizing that she did a lot of things wrong. I'm a little bit disappointed in her basically, and I think I might have to fire her. And I would like to know if you would support me in that decision, and if not, what would you do?
Those are very drastic measures. I would take a gradual step to actually figure out what would happen first. So first I would actually address the situation head on. I would actually see, first of all, if she actually has potential training, if she requires any additional training. We'd have to see how long she's been with the company. Also, if you decide to fire, you have to look at any legal ramifications as well as any payouts associated to it. So I take a step approach and see if there's actually the problem can be solved internally first. And if it cannot be solved internally first, then we can take the necessary actions to dismiss her.
Okay, and what about her bonus? It's based on the benefits or profits. What do you think about that?
Really, as per the adjustments that we've been making, there has been kind of a slight potential bias from the senior management to go towards that direction, to meet the covenants, to I guess meet their bonuses, and so that's it's kind of a gray zone. Obviously, we don't want to create some kind of some tension between the senior managers, but there's clearly kind of a bias, and we see that kind of leaning towards our adjustments. So if, according to our adjustments, we're actually in breach of pretty much all our covenants after our adjustments. So clearly there was an issue here. So this is something that, as Jasper mentioned, something we have to take a step approach into discussing with Peggy what her issues were, in fact, and why didn't she have the proper accounting training, I guess.
And also I have a question regarding one of the ratio that is not respected. So I was wondering, because you told us that it will be another solution to have a new factory in the US, But without respecting the ratio, how do you think that we will be financed? It will be a big investment, so I don't think that it's plausible.
Well, in terms of the building of the new factory, you were going to build one factory in either Mexico, Granby,
Yes.
and I'm not saying, maybe I wasn't clear, but I wasn't saying to produce a second factory, but rather perhaps as a third alternative of just maybe Granby or Mexico to potentially consider having one in the United States as a third option, an alternative.
Okay, perfect.
You want to talk about that? Anything else?
You said that for the IPO that we will have to add to make the adoption of the IFRS for the first time, but why you make all your analysis on the IFRS instead of the ASPE?
Well, you wanted to go towards an IPO, so therefore to do an IPO, you're a public company, therefore you'd have to follow IFRS.
Yeah, I know, but now you currently treat all the problem with the IFRS, even though we are currently using the ASPE, because you said that we will be using the IFRS when we will be in the IPO. So I was just wondering why you didn't make the analysis with the ASPE, because we are currently using them.
Well, regarding IFRS and ASPE, we did consider both IFRS and ASPE, and within our adjustments, the vast majority of them are actually same under ASPE or very similar. And so the adjustments, maybe we forgot to mention it, but a lot of our adjustments would be the same under ASPE. So Peggy, the controller, the controller was also going to have to make those adjustments regardless of whether it was ASPE or under IFRS.
Okay, and she will be able to make all these adjustments? Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.